And so let's talk about the Draconians first. Why I even went to this series? Now, this comes from an old series. At this point, we can call Dragonlance an old series because there hasn't been any iterations of this series. But this is a very impactful series for a lot of us who were like in or Dungeons and Dragons adjacent, like very strong fantasy series. This, of course, is written by Margaret Weiss, Tracy Hickman, Dragonlance. Beautiful, well done series. Well done in terms of like what they contributed mythologically. I got to give it up to him, man. I rode with these guys in this series from like junior high school. I don't know, man. Pretty deep, pretty deep. I feel like early college, I was still kind of messing with the stuff enough where I had like a box set of their stuff, right? And when the movie came out, they did an animated film you guys may have seen. I was one of the few people, and I say few people, that were actually excited about it and completely underwhelmed by it at the same time. So a profound series, and I think if she ever can get a resurgence right now, it'd be very important because I feel like in a lot of ways we should talk about her in the same way that we talk about, or them, those two ladies, in the same way that we talk about other world building minds, because they did an exceptional job. So they have this full world, and part of the things they have this cosmic balance in this separate world. And I have to give you the structure of it to make all this make sense. And they borrow a lot of elements from what I would say is traditional Dungeons and Dragons in the formation of how they do like their mythological crew. Like a lot of what they do is a staple for Dungeons and Dragons. Really, if we look for, like you had the fighter, like the crew was always like kind of an elf leader or ranger type, right? It's always kind of up front. You have a knight and you have a knight and you have like a warrior, right? Those are always a staple. You have a wizard who is a staple, right? You have a healer who is a staple, right? So you have at least those five characters. You always have some type of thief, like what we see with Bilbo Baggins. They represent it in a species that's just identified in different ways. Just a little, they're not hobbits, but they're very kind of similar. For all intents and purposes, to me, are the same thing, right? Because they were just like the thieves, like the burglar thief kind of aspect, right? Then of course you get the dwarf, right? So this is kind of where they structurally are extremely solid on like a living mobile D&D crew. And I don't think it's lost that I picked up on the series at the same time that I was actually playing D&D the most, right, in my life. Like this is like 7th, 8th grade, right? I lived in a small town and stranger things happened, right? We were literally sitting in rooms like that. I forgot the name of that town already. But they were in this town playing games with my buddy Mike, and somebody goes missing. But we were playing these games live. So this series here, Dragonlance, and I don't know why they never parlayed this into anything else. It got like one movie to tell an entire series. Like this was probably, man, I want to say minimum 3 books, man. Like minimum 3 books. And I want to say they took a whole lot longer because they do the initial run and they branch everything off into these ancillary kind of these side books to get the whole story to this series, right? So it's a lot, like it's a lot, and they do all this in like a 90-minute movie or something like that. So of course it's terrible. Of course it doesn't hit in the important part. So you don't really get into it deep, like because there's a lot of complexities to this series. I think if you're into mythology, fantasy, or D&D, like this series just kind of highlights a lot of things, and it's one of the strongest series on defining dragons. Right, this is where I will give her extreme props for her take on dragons. Right, and guys, I know nobody reads all the fantasy stuff, so I don't know necessarily where you guys are drawing your dragon, identity from. It may be different than mine, and I'm willing to accept all that, right? But I do want to say that in this stance, this was a major contributor, just in how we view dragons. This is an absolute major contributor to that overall landscape, and it needs to be recognized. And you know what? Give me one sec, guys. I gotta check one thing real quick. All right, man. I had to make sure that stove was off, man. Thanks for hanging in there with me. You know, it's one of the things, man. Your boy's cooking too, right? By the way, but I cooked everything already. I did all my cooking in advance, so now I can just chill out, talk about this stuff, and then go grub. Like I'm totally your boy's on a healthy thing. I got up and ran this morning, right? That's real, right? So this is where I'm at. So back to this series. So the way in which I regard Dragonlance is with the same level that I regard Tolkien. To be perfectly honest, I feel like she's structural to the culture. And I know there's some other books. And when we talk about dragon books, tomes with dragons in it, we typically rely on what we see from Tolkien, like Smaug, and I know there's some other dragons. Although I never read about any other dragons in that series, so I don't know any other dragons in that series outside of Smaug, right? I know we kind of rely on that. We also look at who else did dragons a lot. Obviously Game of Thrones, like right, George R. R. Martin's work on dragons is very powerful, and he really gets into dragons. The difference that what Dragonlance gives us is dragons and magic, and I think a level of intelligence out of dragons. It's important because scale wise, like obviously Smaug is a very intelligent dragon, right? But the Game of Thrones dragons didn't move like that. They didn't move with. I feel like they were more just kind of brutal. At any rate, Margaret Rice, Tracy Hickman, they give us this like very beautiful telling of dragons. I think deeper than anyone else. They divide dragons up. Dragons have this wide range of types that has different intelligence and also different like character, like physical characteristics. There's snow dragons, the dragons that shoot lightning, the dragons who shoot gases. So dragons themselves are evolving, and even as far as dragons, even within this organization, this because basically this goddess who comes back, who does this, right? Who launches this war, and she's got her dragons who are all evil dragons, and they're all by color. Like I think all the red dragons are evil, like red, like it's like the regular colors, red, blue, green. These guys are all evil. It's like the metallic dragons. These are the nice ones here. These are the guys who are going to be all righteous. So they draw it along those lines, and it's just it's a well written. I mean, you can just imagine the imagery, like dragon armies fighting, and this. I'm telling you, I don't think anyone. And again, if you guys are going to suggest something or throw something at me, I'd be down to check it out. Just in my body of research, this is one of the best like dragon representations of all time, which leads us into the story here. So their dragon culture and nature, I'd say, is really kind of built on Tiamat. Like I feel like they steal some things out of like Sumerian mythology with this main character who's this main nemesis who is herself a dragon being. So she's the queen of darkness, right? And she's not just like chaotic destroyer. She is very like strategic. Like so she's just very strategic, very seductive, very patient. And her dragons are not like these beings are all aligned with her. So where they get the interpretation, where they get the corruption at is that when they launch their war, there's already two factions of dragons, right? There's the queen's got her dragons, and everybody's got their team of dragons too. So to get leverage over these dragons, she finds all their nest of eggs, finds like their clutch of eggs, and basically says like, "We got your eggs." They kidnap all the eggs, and like, okay, we're about to launch a war, and you guys aren't going to do anything about it, right? So all the good dragons are like, "Yeah, we're not going to do anything about it." Strategically, why you put all your eggs in one basket, literally. So I don't know how wise these dragons are, but this is what happens to these dragons, right? They put all their eggs in one basket, literally, and the basket gets lifted off by these other dragons. And the whole point is that we're not gonna stop you guys when you launch your war, so that our dragon babies will be safe. That's what they think, and that's what they go along with. But in an absolutely insidious, absolutely just off the charts evil act, they perform dark magic on these dragon eggs and take them from being these chromatic, gold, silver, platinum dragons that they were supposed to be to these creatures here, right? So they're no longer dragons. They're almost humanoid creatures. They're called Draconians at this point. And you can see they still have wings. Like there's an actual dragon in the back. Like you can see there's a real dragons in the back. These guys are like, they have wings, but they're humanoid. Everything else about them is humanoid, right? And they're foul creatures. Like they're very foul creatures. They're almost born, full size, and they become the foot soldiers for this Dark Queen. This is why it's insidious, because the other dragons realize this. They realize what has happened to their kids, right? Their sacred womb. This is pure corruption. And it seems like, man, there's thousands and thousands of these eggs. So I don't know how many, I don't know if they're getting maybe you split them in half, you get 2 kids out of one egg. I don't know. Because there's thousands of these things. And why would these dragons have all these eggs that were just laying around, right? Whatever, that's their business. That's their gestation periods. So in terms of this is purely dark magic that does this. So they become these engineered creatures. They're twisted. They are not ancient overlords. These are manufactured warriors. And they become your principal adversaries. They take good eggs and they corrupt them through dark magic. And that is where you get Draconians. Just think about that. That's the power of this written word. And again, this is developing mythology. I don't know if more people have gotten into it. It's an amazing story. But what they've done is they've taken their potential, not just potential of a peon regular creature like myself. This is going to be a dragon, a creature who might live for thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years, who may soar beyond the cosmos. This is a higher level or closeness to divinity. I think in this world, this is as close to divinity as they actually get, right? You can be an actual god, but they're right there. And so now they've been weaponized. They've been turned into something that is alien to their nature. And they're not just humanoid creature, man. They're strong, they're still smart, they have their wings so they can glide. And when they die, this is where they get really, really off the hook. This is some true corruption that takes it over the edge. When they die, they do something to kill you. It can be various, there's various different types. This is how specialized the breeding was. The first models that they came out with, their basic infantry, these were if you stab them, right? There's a lot of sword fighting here. There's a lot of sword fighting, axe fighting, hand-to-hand fighting. If you stab them with your sword, they turn stone when they die. So it was a way for them to trap the weapon of their enemy. So if you successfully killed me, I got your sword. And we don't care. Our overlords were totally happy about that. And that progressed into other types of kind of suicide mechanisms that were built into them. Where, not that they would you stab them and then they capture your sword, but also they could explode, they could turn into stone. I think they would explode, or they would release some type of vapor, all kinds of things. So they were heavily breeding. So they ultimately bred 5 levels of these Draconians, right? So it's a blending of this dragon divinity. So you get this intelligence, this access to knowledge, and then you just desecrate it. You have these venomous assassins. You get some that are magic users because they're still able to leverage that side. You get some that are shapeshifters, and then you have these elite arcane leaders, right? And they all die differently. Every single one of them, you have a different death. So you have to know what they can even dissolve in acid. On top of everything. So their death itself, they are killers. And their death itself is is weaponization, right? Mythically, this is beautiful. This is a design that they can harm, even defeat. They are engineered hostility on a whole nother level. But the psychological part of it, right? This is where it's really jacked up, is that what they were supposed to represent, and we're going to talk about this for each of these groups, what you started off to represent and what you ended up as. This is the insidious nature of the corruption. This is how we're gonna balance out how deep these corruptions are. They were there to honor, to protect. They were lawful, good structure. That's what they were. The Draconians that were born from these eggs are now completely evil. It's not a creative mechanism, right? It's stealing from good. This is a form of being parasitic to potential. They take your potential, your next golden generation, and they turn that against you. That is particularly insidious because the writers, they do a brilliant job laying the series out. Like they really do. Like they really, really do. And I can't understand why they've been ignored. Like now when I go back and read their work, now I'm like, it's a little saccharine and sweet for me, man. Like really, they really get into these, descriptions about beauty, and I'm like, yeah, that's a little softer than what I would like. But the core structure, the structure of their mythology, extremely strong, right? I'm just telling you guys, like this is extremely strong mythology. And this kind of mirrors, but this corruption is at the very core of it. This is not just a minor thing. This corruption was a major plan because clearly they had figured out like the use of magic, like what they would have to do to make this happen. So this is what launches the War of the Lance, which is their main thrust. It kicks off over like a 3-book series, I believe. It may go deep, but I know it goes deeper. I think they do like the first one is a complete set, but then like they have additional like after that this other stuff happens. So from this corruption, it's like very thematic, right? It's actually really well done because the corruption happens through ritual. So this ritual is combining both magic, like this is an evil organization. This isn't some random. This is evil at scale, evil at mass scale. This is corporatized evil, right? Because it's well organized. They're moving at scale, and they do a great job. The eggs themselves. This is symbolic. This is the stolen future. This is stolen innocence. And then death becomes a weapon. And even in death, even in the mind, if you're facing this enemy, one, you may know that, man, that's actually a baby dragon, right? And by dragon years, they're still babies. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen any baby Draconians. I don't know if they had baby Draconians. It seemed like they came out of the womb ready to go to war, like how the Mordecai, when you hatch, you're ready to go. So we still have to look at them and say they're very young because dragons mature over hundreds of years before they mature. These are still 100% dragon babies. So we have to say, man, you're dragon babies. And you're so evil that you could kill me even after you're dead, right? That's how much hostility is wrapped up in you. Something that should be one of our protectors. You should be one of our main strengths. So from a psychological standpoint, it's a punishing blow right from the beginning. They really, really screw with the alignment of the total package right off the start, right? So this is a very powerful, it's a very tragic story when you look at, ultimately what happened to him, right? So I'm going to move on to the next one. Let's see if I can